Oh, I didn't see you there. So because we are all getting ready for spooky season and it is quickly leading up to October, I figured that I would talk about 10 of the books that I am really excited to read during spooky season. As a quick little disclaimer, I will say that I probably will not get to all 10 of these books. These are just the options that I have for whenever spooky season rolls around and I am feeling in the mood to read something that is going to fit the season. So without further ado, let me get into the 10 books that I feel would be perfect for October. The first book on the stack is one that I have been wanting to read for so long, and that's Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. So this book is a YA contemporary thriller. It is super popular. I feel like everybody has already read it. I am probably one of the last people to have not read it, and I feel like I have been missing out on so much. So this book is set at Ellingham Academy, and there was a kidnapping that happened at the academy by someone who went by the name of Truly Devious. So then years later, the main character, Stevie Bell, goes to the academy and she is determined to figure out what exactly happened during those kidnappings. And like I said, I have heard so many good things about this book. I think I'm really going to enjoy it. I feel like it'll be perfect for fans of A Study in Charlotte, which I am a huge fan of A Study in Charlotte. It's one of my favorite book series of all time. So I feel like this book also kind of gives me those similar vibes, and I think I'm really going to enjoy it. The next book on this list is actually one of the few middle grade books that I own, and that is 13 Witches by Jodi Lynn Anderson. So the synopsis for this book says, 12-year-old Rosie Oak's mom is missing whatever it is that makes mothers love their daughters. All her life, Rosie has known this, and turned to stories for comfort. Then, on the night Rosie decides to throw her stories away forever, an invisible ally helps her discover The Witch Hunter's Guide to the Universe, a book that claims that all of the evil in the world stems from 13 witches who are unseen, but also unstoppable. One of these witches, the Memory Thief, holds an insidious power to steal our most precious treasures, our memories. And it is this witch who has cursed Rosie's mother. In her quest to save her mom, and with her wild, loyal friend Germ by her side, Rosie will find the layers hidden under the reality she only thought she knew, where ghosts linger as shades of the past, where clouds witness the world and a ladder dangles from the moon, leading to something bigger and more. Here, words are weapons against the darkness, and witch hunters are those brave enough to wield their imaginations in the face of the unthinkable. So this book sounds absolutely perfect for this time of year, and I think it's going to be really interesting to follow this main character in her quest to figure out what is wrong with her mother and how she has these connections to the 13 witches. So I haven't heard a lot of hype or really anything about this book. I guess most of the people that I follow don't really read a lot of middle grade, so that's not super surprising. But I am really intrigued to start this book. It's been on my shelf for a little while and I always look at it and I always want to start it, so I feel like October will be the perfect time to start this book. The next book is one that I kind of went back and forth about putting on this list, and that is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. And I went back and forth on this book mainly because I was like, is this spooky enough? Is this going to fit the theme of the video? And and the more that I thought about it, the more that I felt like it fit in perfectly, and I feel like this is the best time to read this book. I do have to admit though that I really don't know a lot of what the actual novel is about. I know plenty about the musical and a bunch of the retellings that I've read, but I've never actually read the original novel, so this will be really interesting. It's definitely high priority on this list, and I'm really excited to see the differences between the original novel and the musical and all of the retellings that I've read. The next book on this list is one I've actually already started, and that is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. So actually a lot of Grady Hendrix books really catch my interest. This is the only one that I actually own, but there are plenty of his books that I would absolutely love to own and love to read in the future. But this one I think is a really good starting point. So like I said, I have already started this. I don't think I'm very far into it, but Oh yeah, I am currently 29 pages into it, so yeah, I didn't really get a huge jumping off point. But if you want to know what the book is about, the synopsis says, Patricia Campbell's life has never felt smaller. Her husband is a workaholic, her teenage kids have their own lives, her senile mother-in-law needs constant care, and she's always a step behind on her endless to-do list. The only thing keeping her sane is her book club, a close-knit group of Charleston women united by their love of true crime. Then, James Harris walks into her life during the summer of 1993. He makes her feel things that she hasn't felt in years. But when children on the other side of town go missing, Patricia wonders if he's connected. Is he a Brad Pitt, a Bundy, or something much worse? So I am super, super excited to read this book. From the only couple of pages that I've already read, it has such an engaging writing style, and I think I'm really, really going to fall in love with this book. It is very, very clearly perfect for spooky season. I don't really know if this is necessarily a thriller, but it is going to have a really, really great mystery. The next book is actually one that I got really recently in a book box, and that is The Stranger Behind You by Carol Goodman. And ever since I opened that box and saw this book and kind of knew what it was about, I have been super, super intrigued by this book. So basically it's about this journalist named Joan, and she has just exposed a newspaper tycoon as a sexual predator, and so she needs to go into hiding, and she goes to this place called The Refuge. And while she's at The Refuge, she meets these two other women who have these really complex and mysterious lives, and she kind of gets tangled up within them and starts to uncover their own mysteries. So this book sounds really, really good, and I love the title so much. It really just sends a little strike of fear into you, and it's so eye-catching, and I cannot wait to start this book. I am not typically a thriller or mystery type of reader, but I am so not opposed to jumping into this genre and trying to find books that will really speak to me. The next book is another one that I am super excited about and will probably read for both Spooky Month and the Latinx Book Bingo Readathon for Latinx Heritage Month, and that is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina, and this is by Zoraida Cordova. I love Zoraida Cordova. I feel like I have to mention that every time I mention one of her books, just how much I absolutely adore her. And I am so excited to read this book. It's so intriguing, and it's another one that really has to deal with family, which is something that I really like in books. Like I've said a billion times on this channel, I love reading about family drama, family history, and the mysteries that are within these family units. I just think it's so interesting. And basically the synopsis says, the Montoyas are used to a life without explanations. They know better than to ask why the pantry never seems to run low or empty, or why their matriarch won't ever leave their home in Four Rivers, not for graduations, weddings, or baptisms. But when Orquídea Divina invites them to her funeral and to collect their inheritance, they hope to learn the secrets that she has held onto so tightly their whole lives. Instead, Orquídea is transformed into a caiba tree, her limbs stretching into roots and branches, leaving them with more questions than answers. 7 years later, her gifts have manifested in different ways for Miramar, Ray, and Rhiannon, granting them unexpected blessings and powers. But soon, a hidden figure begins to tear through their family tree, picking them off one by one as it seeks to destroy Orquídea's line. Determined to save what's left of their family and uncover the truth behind their inheritance, her descendants travel to Ecuador, to place where Orquídea buried her secrets and broken promises and never looked back. So like I said, this obviously has so much to do with the family and the drama and the history within that family, and I think I'm really going to enjoy this book. I love the fact that they have to really go back to their roots and figure out where these things originated. And that just makes me so excited to pick this book up. This next book is one where I'm not really sure where I'm supposed to start within this series, because it has a couple of prequels and just it's a little bit of everything, so it kind of makes it a little complicated to figure out where I should start. But that is Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman, and I've actually never seen this movie. So I've never read this book, I've never seen this movie. I know it's incredibly popular, but I felt like it'd be perfect for the season. It seems a little bit more lighthearted than a lot of the other books that I have on this list. I don't know if that's exactly true, but I guess we'll figure it out when I finally read it. Basically, it says, the Owen sisters confront the challenges of life and love in this bewitching novel from bestselling author Alice Hoffman. For more than 200 years, the Owens women have been blamed for everything that has gone wrong in their Massachusetts town. Jillian and Sally have endured that fate as well. As children, the sisters were forever outsiders, taunted, talked about, pointed at. Their elderly aunts almost seemed to encourage the whispers of witchery, with their musty house and their exotic concoctions and their crowd of black cats. But all Jillian and Sally wanted was to escape. One will do so by marrying, the other by running away, but the bonds they share will bring them back, almost as if by magic. I am so excited to finally get to this book. The only other Alice Hoffman book that I've ever read was Aquamarine, and that was back when I was a kid. I was probably like 10 or 11 years old, and I absolutely love that book. That became one of my favorite books of all time. I've read it so many times. So I'm hoping that with as much as I loved Aquamarine, I will really enjoy Practical Magic. The next book is one that I bought super recently, like literally yesterday, and that is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, and this is another kind of mystery thriller book. This is set during the 10-year college reunion for the Duquesne University, and there seems to have been an unsolved murder from back when they went to college, and it has kind of weighed heavily on them ever since. And the last sentence in the synopsis says, when the 6 friends are reunited, they will be forced to confront what happened that night and the year's worth of secrets each of them would do anything to keep hidden. I think this one will be super interesting. There seems like there's going to be a lot of different storylines and characters that we are going to have to follow in this book, and I think that's going to make for a really complex and interesting story. I'm also really intrigued by the idea of it occurring during a 10-year reunion. I think that's the perfect setting for this kind of book, and it'll be really interesting to see how all of the mysteries become uncovered. The second to last book also takes place at a college, and that is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. And this book I've actually recently been hearing a lot of mixed reviews about, so it does make me a little nervous to actually read it, but I do want to give it a shot and I want to make my own opinions about this book, so I am really excited to read it. The synopsis of this book says, Edward Fosca is a murderer. Of this, Mariana is certain, but Fosca is untouchable. A handsome and charismatic Greek tragedy professor at Cambridge University, Fosca is adored by staff and students alike, particularly by the members of a secret society of female students known as the Maidens. Mariana Andros is a brilliant but troubled group therapist who becomes fixated on the Maidens when one member, a friend of Mariana's niece Zoe, is found murdered in Cambridge. Mariana, who was once herself a student at the university, quickly suspects that behind the idyllic beauty of the spires and turrets, and beneath the ancient traditions, lies something sinister. And she becomes convinced that, despite his alibi, Edward Fosca is guilty of the murder. But why would the professor target one of his students, and why does he keep returning to the rites of Persephone, the maiden, and her journey to the underworld? When another body is found, Mariana's obsession with proving Fosca's guilt spirals out of control, threatening to destroy her credibility as well as her closest relationships. But Mariana is determined to stop this killer, even if it costs her everything, including her own life. So I am really, really excited to check out this psychological thriller, especially since it has so much to do with Greek mythology. I am always interested in anything having to do with Greek mythology, so I figured that this will definitely be a really exciting read, whether it's good or it's bad. I really do hope that I like it because it just has so many elements that really, really speak to my interests. And the very last book on this list was actually kind of a really great find from the Dollar Tree, and that is Baby Teeth by Zoe Stage. I actually don't know if that's how they pronounce their name, but I have heard a lot about Baby Teeth during the couple of years I've been on BookTube. I actually can't remember when this book came out. I don't know if it'll say in here. Okay, so this book came out in 2018, which definitely makes sense. I have heard about it for a couple of years, and I know a couple of people who have read it. I can't remember their exact opinions on this book, and unfortunately when I go to the Dollar Tree they have really, really bad Wi-Fi, so I can never go on Goodreads and check out a book on there. So we have really no idea what we're getting into with Baby Teeth. So the synopsis says, Suzette is a devoted stay-at-home mother doing everything she can to connect with her 7-year-old daughter, who cannot or will not speak. But ever since Hannah was a baby, Suzette couldn't help but feel despised by her, manipulated and scared to death. Alex, Hannah's father, wants to believe his wife's accounts of Hannah's cruel and unusual behavior. The only problem is that Alex has never really seen it himself. Hannah shows him nothing but love, and it's driving Suzette literally crazy. Could it be that Hannah is just a typical naughty girl, one whose everyday antics toward her mother point to intelligence, creativity, maybe even charm? Or is Hannah, as Suzette fears, actually trying to kill her? A powerhouse, razor-sharp novel of psychological suspense, Baby Teeth raises more questions than it answers and will leave you guessing until its shocking conclusion. So every time people talk about this book and what it's about, I am always intrigued by it. I always want to know what happens. So I figure, for better or worse, I should read this book and finally figure out what happens in it. I am so excited to get into this book. I feel like it's the one book on this list that I genuinely really, really want to know how the story ends, and I am so excited that I finally have it in my possession. I found it at the Dollar Tree, and I'm finally going to get to read it, finish it, and I'm so excited about it, obviously. Let me see if I can grab all of these books really quick. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of books. I would love if I would be able to read all of these books. That would literally be amazing. I was actually genuinely surprised that I was even able to pick out 10 books from my shelves of like spooky, thriller, mystery, whatever kind of books. It's genuinely not the kind of genre that I typically reach for. It's not the kind of genre that I typically purchase. So I was really glad to find 10 books, and there was even a couple more that I could have put on this list and decided not to. So that was really exciting for me, and I'm so ready to dive into something new. I feel like a lot of this year has been kind of getting out of my comfort zone and trying new things. So I'm really excited that I have 10 of these books that I can read for the month of October. I would love it if down below in the comments you could recommend me any other books that are similar in vibe to these 10 books that I just showed you. That would be super helpful. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All of the links are going to be down below in the description, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!